So we're gonna get started. Just checking in. Sam, do we have everything ready for us to get going?
Even here?
Matthew, can you
He's back there.
hear us? Matthew, are you able to hear us now?
Yes, I'm able to hear you. Thank you.
Great. Johanna, are you on board here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. Okay, Granicus is running, everything's running, so we are ready, Chair Sabatier.
All right, we're going to get started with 6.7, our 12 p.m. item, presentation of Roadmap Task Force Pilot Project. If Matthew can please go ahead and share the screen with the presentation. Supervisor Pyska and myself will share the presentation. And do want to thank all staff, and I'll go ahead and name them during the presentation, or one of us will name them. Want to thank staff for all the work provided to get to us to this situation of presenting to the board what is the plan with the Roadmap Task Force. And let's go ahead and go to the next slide, please, and let's get started.
And can we darken the room?
And if we can turn off the lights, please, for ambiance. Thank you. And so, as you recollect, I just wanted to give a brief summary. On April 16th, 2021, as we usually do every year, we have a board workshop. During that workshop, it was decided and directed to staff to go ahead and start working on the Roadmap Task Force based on a suggestion of enhanced code enforcement and community revitalization. Our first meeting that we got together for was on June 18th, 2021, and we've been meeting fairly regularly. I want to say at least once a month, sometimes a little bit more often, and it consists of animal control, code enforcement, law enforcement, administration, Supervisor Pyska, myself. An invitation to the district attorney has been sent out, as we believe that the district attorney has the ability to help us make sure that we succeed in other ways as well. Next.
What is it? It's a focused community revitalization. We're going to learn from the past, learn from law enforcement, code enforcement, North Shore Task Force. The goals that we've worked on are to decrease blight, decrease abandoned vehicles, decrease crime, enhance and decrease crime, increasing community safety, increase our quality of life, and stimulate economic growth.
And I'm sure that you're all very well aware of what was going on in the North Shore Task Force between the Sheriff's Department and Code Enforcement. We didn't want to start anything from scratch and reinvent the wheel, so we wanted to learn from what they had already done, but we did want to add a whole lot more to their scope, as we think that was an important part of it, but we want to expand on what they were doing. Next, please. So then we were tasked with choosing a community. Some of the criteria that we created, preferred if the community had a municipal advisory committee, preferred if a community was an entry point into the county to start the positive experience, no matter which direction people are coming into the county. And then also we wanted to review data for which communities needed that focused attention for the greatest impact. Next.
What is needed to be successful? So we looked, we had a lot of conversations, we dug into this really deeply, and we decided that 2 law enforcement officers, 1 sergeant, 1 deputy, 2 code enforcement officers. Animal control believes they can handle the increase with current staffing, support and participation from our local municipal advisory council and the surrounding stakeholders, and then develop an action plan.
Then measures of success, and this is still a work in progress, but we want to make sure that we have the ability to know and judge whether or not we have been successful with the mission that we're taking on. And so we wanted to obtain baseline data of code violations, crime statistics, and animal control reports. At minimum, have an annual review with the Board of Supervisors to update on the task force and its progress. And we want to create a timeline that's going to be a viable timeline for success. We don't believe that in a single year we can do the changes and the impact that we want to make. So we do believe that in 2 years we would be able to find ways to reduce the baseline data, hence increasing the quality of life and making a safer community. Next, please.
So the first, we're starting with a pilot project. The first recommended community will be a pilot project, and the success may lead to other recommended communities in the future. Proposed positions for task force will remain with those communities. This will ensure that the changes made will not digress. If the pilot is successful and approved for expansion, new positions may be proposed for next community that is recommended. So the idea is if this is successful, we leave those staff in place in that community and we expand to the next community, making new hires for new code enforcement, new law enforcement, so that we don't ever walk away from the work that we're doing.
Yeah, the idea was to create permanent change, not do a cleanup as we all have experienced, where you clean up, it feels good, you walk away, you come back a month or two later, and you have to start cleaning up again. And the adding of additional staff for future projects is a possibility depending on, is the need there, is the need not there, depends on if the next project is going to be adjacent to the one that we started with, or if it's going to be on a complete polar opposite side of the county, which at that point would probably require more. Next, please. So also we talked about the revitalization of substations. Sheriff substations still exist around the lake and are not as prominent or utilized as they could be due to staffing. This project will help to bring law enforcement and code enforcement permanently into our communities. This will create faster response time and constant eyes on the community. And that right there, those last two, I think, are some of the most important reasons as to why that change will be permanent. We know that if we have law enforcement traveling through our communities, that people are less likely to do the things that they wouldn't do if they never saw law enforcement or code enforcement driving around. So we want that presence.
Okay, here's our big reveal. The committee recommends this community. Clear Lake Oaks.
And again, it's an entry point into our community, and that we feel that we can make an impact and make that change. And if we can move forward, we can see the map as to what the area of focus will be. Because Clear Lake Oaks does kind of cover multiple communities, and we wanted to make sure to make it a community that was within our capacity to make the change rather than making it too large of a scope. And so basically from the water tower on the east side that has the beautiful mural on it, all the way to Sulphur Bank Road, and holding on to all of the keys and some of the surrounding areas off of the highway, making that community be our main focus. At least that is our recommendation to the board. And I believe that we have a budget for the next one.
So our draft budget, which is also still a work in progress, for salaries, we'll have $325,610. For nuisance abatement, it'll be just over $400,000. Services and supplies, $46,974, for a total of $707,584. And the funds come from the Cannabis Tax Budget Unit 1072.
And so then, once a community has been approved by this board, so we can move forward, these are the next steps to consider. Consider proposed budget on September 14th. Right now, it is still a draft budget, but it will be provided to us on September 14th when we go over the entirety of the budget. Start recruiting to fill those positions that have been allocated for this task force. Replace Supervisor Paiska with Supervisor Crandall to continue work on the committee. It doesn't make sense to have two supervisors on the committee that does not hold that community in their district. So we discussed it, and Supervisor Paiska has cordially offered to step down and let Supervisor Crandall come in. We need to start drafting an action plan so that we're ready to start moving forward with an actual process and strategy, and then start engaging with the municipal advisory council, not committee, but council and local stakeholders to get the participation of the community themselves. And so this can be businesses, this can be community members, but we know that the municipality, goodness gracious.
Municipal Advisory Council.
Municipal Advisory Council is going to be the focal point of most of the communities, because people know that that's where you go if you have concerns or if you want to see change in your community. And so we want to make sure to be engaged with them as much as possible. I believe that's the last slide. Yep. Any questions? Thank you, Sam. Supervisor Scott.
That budget, is that budget for just 1 year, or is that the 2-year budget?
That is a single year budget, yes.
And then are you thinking that going in there and revitalize the community, it'll start paying for itself when we start getting the proper taxes from the houses that aren't, are we going in that direction, or are we just?
So we will be reviewing the administrative fines that will be coming back to us, and I think that will be a vital point of recouping some of the funds. I think the other side is we need to focus on what is the actual long-term goal. The long-term goal is to agitate the economy in the area. If you create a safer environment and a safer community, it's going to make it more interesting and intriguing for investors to want to come in and commit their dollars to that community. And so I would suspect that we will see some increases. I don't know that it will be a perfect wash of that. But I think that just the quality of life and everything else is what the people in all areas, granted we can only start at one area, or I feel we can only start in one area, that everybody deserves.
No, and don't get me wrong, I'm really excited about this, and I'm really excited for Supervisor Crandall, because this is in his district. I couldn't remember, are we working with the tax collector on this? So maybe we can also focus on, houses that aren't paying their taxes, we can get those back on the rolls? Is she involved, or?
I think that there's a lot of other options and opportunities. I think even looking at roads, because that's part of the area. And I'm going to say something, and I think it's going to come out perfectly right. When I travel through Lake County and I come over the mountain over St. Helena and I go through Middletown, that's how I want I don't want it to look exactly the same. I know we all have our own views and our own feel and atmosphere, but when I go through Middletown, that's the level of experience. I want to see the flags hanging from the posts to really show that there's a vibrant commercial community in the area. I want to see the beautiful park. I want to see going down Highway 29 in Middletown is a scenic route, and it going by the new Hardisters. That's what we need to see. We need to see that level of vibrancy everywhere when you enter into our community, and slowly we need to build inside to eventually have every single one of our communities look like that.
No, and I agree with that, and I think along with that, we build safety.
Yes.
Because people are more engaged in their community. We don't have the garbage. People aren't willing to dump the garbage. Our kids are safer on the street. So I'm really excited for this project, and definitely support it.
Yeah, and one other thing about the budget, a lot of that cost is staffing, and we are trying to grow this staffing. That's part of our strategy, and ultimately we want deputies in every community, and ultimately we want a code enforcement officer responsible for every district. So this is incrementally how we reach those goals. So it does seem, if you look at the budget, it's a lot, but those are already embedded in our other priorities.
Now, is there a substation in that area already?
So what we did is we looked at the Lucerne substation, which is within reach of that community.
Oh, okay.
Already that would decrease the time for response for those that are getting calls from Clear Lake Oaks area.
Well, that would help out both communities then, having them in Lucerne. Great.
Oh, thank you. No, I'm ecstatic about this. Thank you very much. I think too that it helps that the East Region Town Hall Committee will have some, because they've actually in that town, actually all of my town councils have been getting a lot of activity lately, and it's revolving around what we're talking about as it is. There's been some folks that have been in the county for quite some time that brought something forward that took place in 2004, but then it dissolved and went away like you mentioned, and so it's perfect that you're stating that you want to try and ensure that things like this, if it works, it stays, that type of thing. So that's going to make a big difference. So I'm just really excited about this, and I know that they'll be excited too, and I'm pretty sure I can mention this to them tomorrow when we have our town hall in Clear Lake Oaks. So.
And I will add one thing. We do want dedicated staff, but just because somebody is hired in that dedicated position doesn't mean they can't move on up to other positions. We just want to make sure to have the allocated positions that we can keep full as much as we can so that those communities can have the service, the required service.
Right.
And there's one other part that we talked about, it's just a little bit alluded to in the presentation, but the opportunity for a partnership with some of the private industry and stakeholders in the community, and maybe working with them to help them develop a grant program for, assisting with facade sprucing up or
Right.
paint. And so I have reached out to, and I'll pass that information along to just some of the bigger business owners who are really interested in investing in their community that way.
For uniformity and whatnot with the businesses.
Less about uniformity, but just about,
Again,
a
ambiance.
fresh coat of paint, ambiance.
Right, yeah.
Curb appeal.
Curb appeal, all of those things that the big stakeholders, they want that community cleaned up just as much as everybody else.
Because they benefit from that economic vibrancy as well. Supervisor Sutton?
Yeah, thank you for the hard work of the committee and, all of our staff that helped put it together. And I appreciate that you didn't reinvent the wheel, but, I did have, just some of the same questions as Supervisor Scott, how are we going to sustain this over a multi-year period? And I think, I would assume what you're doing is obviously this entails everything else that we're doing with the county. Obviously, we are working on everything with, we made a big step last year with our workforce, and hopefully we're going to start to see those improvements. So hopefully as we go forward with the task force, we're going to be bringing money into our workforce that allows us to have those people available. So it's not an offset all the time, that we already have those extra staff people hired in the sheriff's office, code enforcement, and then they're just assigned to the areas. That's the long-term goal, right? How we're going to keep doing that. Okay, just want to make sure. And then, revitalizing, you put it up there, response time. One of the biggest ones that we always deal with, especially depending what end of the county you're on in our air enforcement. So I appreciate it. Very happy that it started in the Clear Lake Oaks area up there. But this will be something that we're going to grow, as you said, for the entire county to keep moving forward. So I'll support it, and good job. Good job, committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there's no further comments, let's go ahead and go to the public comments. And so please come on up to the microphone. We have a comment in the boardroom, and we will get to the Zoom room once we're done in the boardroom.
Joan Moss. I live on Cobb Mountain, and for about 6 months to a year, there's been an abandoned vehicle, and where I walk, a 3-mile walk. And then there was another abandoned vehicle. And then they moved the first abandoned vehicle to the middle of the road. And I talked with code enforcement just 2 weeks ago. And he promised me he'd take care of it. And he did.
And Joan, this sounds
I went and thanked him for it.
Joan?
You said it was code enforcement, so I'm just commenting that it worked. I'm just commenting that code enforcement worked.
Thank
and
you.
I went to thank him. Thank you.
Thank you. Wasn't seeing the connection. Thank you for making the connection. And so let's go ahead and open up for the Zoom room. I see that we have Director Metcalf.
Yes, I'm a little video challenged, but I just wanted to remind the board that the county already does have a presence in Clear Lake Oaks, and I'm very excited about this because Behavioral Services has a peer sports center there at the Big Oak Shopping Center. So whatever we can do to help move this along, please let us know.
Absolutely. Thank you for the reminder. We are looking to work with every and any stakeholder within the county and outside of the, within the county departments and outside of the county departments as well. So, but again, appreciate the reminder and the comment. And next we have Betsy Khan. Please provide your full name, which I think I got right, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Board. This is Betsy Khan. I'd like to just give you a little laundry list of things that could help that I think you should consider. The first one is empowering the Municipal Advisory Council to update the shoreline area plan, which is really weird. Then implement the community wildfire protection plan, establish the hazardous vegetation management priorities, which is already being done by clerk and the Resource Conservation District. Consider grant to upgrade the fire protection water services there. Identify emergency management capacity building to develop community lifelines that are called for in the National Response Framework from FEMA, and then develop Firewise communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. And that is all the hands that I see both in the boardroom and the Zoom room. So bringing it back to the board, and I don't believe we need an actual motion for this today unless Supervisor Crandall feels the need to celebrate with a motion. But I think direction is good enough.
Yeah, you may want to do it to make it stick.
Okay, yes. So I will motion to approve the implementation of the Roadmap Task Force Pilot Project Action Plan in Clear Lake Oaks.
Second.
We have a motion from Supervisor Crandall and a second by Supervisor Pyska. Johanna, roll call, please.
Okay, Supervisor Simon,
Yes.
Supervisor Crandall,
Aye.
Supervisor Scott,
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska,
Yes.
and Supervisor Sabatier.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I think you were going to announce action out of closed session at the start of the meeting, and this was such an exciting agenda item, we just rolled with it.
I did just roll.
So would you like to?
Is there any action out of closed session?
Yes, there was. I would like to make a motion to appoint Mary Darby as Community Development Director effective October 4th, 2021 at Step 3 on the Lake County salary scale.
Second.
We have a motion from Supervisor Crandall and a second by Supervisor Simon. Roll call, please. Johanna.
Okay, Supervisor Simon,
Yes.
Supervisor Crandall,
Aye.
Supervisor Scott,
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska,
Yes.
and Supervisor Sabatier.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mary Darby.
There's a press release coming out right now,
Shortly.
shortly.
Thank you very much for the reminder. That was an important one, and I apologize for
Sorry
missing
about
it. I will move
Did it
on.
in 3 minutes.
Sorry, Eddie, you talked too much.
So our last public item is 7.2. A, consideration of a presentation on PG&E's Better Together Resilient Communities Grant Program. And B, consideration of a resolution of support for Train Technologies to submit an application on behalf of the County of Lake to PG&E's Better Together Resilient Communities Grant Program in pursuit of funds for additional engineering and due diligence in the evaluation of potential advanced energy projects. Director Ewing.
All right, good afternoon, Board. Lars Ewing, Public Services Director, and Matthew Rothstein is co-presenting this with me, along with some representatives of Train, who I think either should be on or should be on soon. So last month, your board may recall that you approved a no-cost contract with Train to investigate a variety of potential energy savings measures to county-owned buildings. Train's work is underway right now on the component of that contract for preliminary energy audit for county buildings. There's an additional component of their scope of work, and in general, they have it broken up into two areas: the traditional energy savings measures for existing buildings, and then an advanced energy projects phase or approach. So they are looking at advanced energy projects as a means to generate potential county revenue, provide power resiliency, or further statewide climate goals. The impacts of these type of projects generally extend beyond the county buildings to kind of the community surrounding the project location, and that's why Matthew is here from the administrative office, because they've been directly involved in that aspect of that. Also, if there are any advanced energy projects that might include infrastructure from other departments or even other agencies outside of the county, those departments or agencies are consulted and included. So last week, Train presented to Public Services, the County Administrative Office, as well as Special District, a grant opportunity through PG&E that may be able to fund a feasibility study of a couple of advanced energy projects that Trane felt may prove viable. And before I hand things over to Trane, and you can see Doug Walker, Michael Day on, and I'll hand it over here briefly to them, actually to Matthew, and that's one of to make sure that Matthew has an opportunity to touch on a couple of things. One is some other entities that are expected to apply for this grant, and also touch on a recommended change to the resolution that was included in the agenda packet, as well as any other comments that he has. So Matthew, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Director Ewing. So this is Matthew Rothstein, Deputy County Administrative Officer. As your board is aware, Public Services Buildings and Grounds staff and the Special Districts Administration team have long been proactive in addressing energy consumption surrounding things like lighting and water usage. And under the Energy Savings Performance Contracting model, savings generated from upgrades to items such as those are typically used to fund larger energy products such as solar panels and battery storage. So because Lake County has already undertaken these upgrades, I want to reiterate Director Ewing's point that Trane has invested a great deal of focus in advanced energy projects that can be expected to provide energy resiliency. And that's resiliency both for planned public safety power shutoff events and outages that may occur due to emergencies such as wildfires. And also they're looking at advanced energy projects that can potentially bring county revenue. Your board has previously met Michael Day from the Trane Company, and he's here today to present information on a grant opportunity through PG&E's Better Together Resilient Community Program and Better Together Resilient Communities Program. And Douglas Walker is also present. He's replacing Reggie Ingram, who you may have seen before, was long served as the primary contact for the county. And Doug has been with Trane for more than 2 decades and has over 3 decades of experience in the energy space. We're very pleased to have Doug with us today. If the proposed grant application is awarded, the $100,000 Better Together grant would be used to fund work on feasibility studies by Trane and their subcontractors. And Trane indicates that your board, by electing to submit this application, that would not obligate the county for any other additional spending outside of the funds awarded by the grant at this particular step today. And in other words, if the grant's awarded, the expectation is that your board will act to convey those funds to Trane to support the work described in the grant application. And Michael and Doug will speak more to that in a moment. And you'll also recall from the memo that there are multiple Lake County entities that are expected to apply for this program. One of those is Hidden Valley Lake Community Services District, and another is Clerk. And Clerk is actually going to be applying for that program with a letter of support from the Community Risk Reduction Authority. And we wanted to reassure your board there's no conflict there. There's no requirement that board-related entities support only one application in this process. But I also wanted to draw your attention to a change to the resolution that was attached to the board item that occurred in the time since your agenda was posted. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now so you can see that. So the red text there, this is the fourth whereas on page 2 of the attachment. It says, whereas Trane will complete additional feasibility analysis on the potential projects at no additional cost to the County of Lake, with the exception that if the Better Together Resilient Communities grant application is successful in securing funds, Trane will be compensated for its services to complete the work described in the grant application pursuant to a written agreement to be entered between Trane and the county in an amount no greater than the maximum payable in that agreement. So just wanted to make sure that your board was aware of that change as we move into this item. And so I wanted to just also give many thanks to Director Ewing and County Council Anita Grant for your partnership in developing that slightly modified language at a late stage just to make sure that we're able to move forward. And also at this stage now, the staff recommends that you receive the report from Trane. Again, Michael Day and Doug are here. And should you determine that you wish to authorize Trane to apply for the Better Together program on the county's behalf, staff additionally recommends that you adopt the proposed resolution as now drafted with the change we just presented. And Director Ewing, Special Districts Administrator Scott Harder and we are all going to be here to answer your questions if needed as well. And now I'll turn this presentation over to Michael Day and Douglas Walker of Train. Thank you, Michael and Doug, for being here today.
Absolutely, and thank you. That was a wonderful overview of exactly what we're going to be going through here. And so, Michael, if you want to go to the second slide, and then I'm going to kind of toss it your way. But as just explained, we're doing kind of twofold. We're looking at advanced energy, and we're also looking at traditional energy savings and seeing where the two of them can marry together. The thing that we want to talk about today is the fact that there's timing issues with trying to go for some of these grants. And because of the timing issues, it's pushed us to where we needed to chat with you today. So we will be talking about this grant that is available. And with that, I think, Michael, I'm just going to head your way and let you go through it.
And hopefully you can hear me now. All right. Thanks, Doug. And thanks, everybody. Especially thanks go out to Director Ewing and to County Council. This has come up rather quickly, and they've been pretty nimble at being able to respond to this. The first grant application we're talking about, the one for today, actually the grant window closes today. So we have a couple hours to submit it. And that is the Better Together grant, and it's the first of many that are available here. But these are really the ones that are first, that are coming up the fastest, and we'll talk about the process a little bit later. But the question might be, what are we going for? And really, this is a very simplified version of what the system is that we're looking for. And this would be in the North Lakeport area. Without getting too specific, we haven't acquired any of the properties yet, or the rights to the properties that we'd need. But basically, we'd be looking to add additional photovoltaic panels to the ones that are already in the ground there at the wastewater treatment plant, near the jail, near animal control. The power from the pumps, or from the PV, would go to water pumps that would move the water up a new pipeline to an elevated location where we put a new water tank. Then later in the day, the water from the tank would run down the pipeline through a hydroelectric turbine and generate electricity going out to the grid. The water would go down to a lower tank. So it's a closed loop system in that it goes from tank to tank, and it doesn't really have any evaporation. So once you fill it up, that's about it. This process, this project overall, would be, as envisioned, would be paid for by an investor under a public-private partnership. And they would have the tax equity from the installation and sales to utilities. And those two things would pay them back for their investment on this. The benefits, as Assistant CAO Rothstein mentioned, were that we would have power resilience in this location. We would have wildfire resilience. We're talking about something on the order of about 45 million gallons. And so the pipeline itself can be studded with hydrants. We can connect this into fire mains for emergency water supply, and do other things like have emergency rapid refill stations for water tankers. So it really is a pretty significant wildfire resilience element. And because it has co-located renewables and storage, we're designing this around a 96-hour duration with no outside power for the microgrid, at least for the one in the Lakeport area. The project in Middletown's a little bit different. But the idea is basically the same. Use water running down the hill to turn a turbine, generate electricity, and generate a new county revenue stream that can be used for other purposes. The tanks serve multiple uses. So this is actually a design for Hidden Valley Lake. And in this, they'd have a 35 million gallon tank overall, where 20 million gallons would be going up and down the hill on a daily basis. 10 million gallons would be there so that the tank can sell what are called ancillary services, where they're in standby to provide power. You don't get paid a lot, but you get paid every hour out of the year, and you're very rarely called. But it doesn't cost much to have a slightly larger tank and to have the water in there waiting. And then there's 5 million gallons that no matter what is never touched in energy operations. It's always there for firefighting. In reality, it should be 15 million gallons. You're only talking about 7 or 8 times a year that the 10 million gallons for ancillary services is ever touched. And so that is how one tank can actually provide multiple services to the community. So for North Lakeport, this is what's called the critical facility microgrid. So instead of trying to take on the entire community, it takes on a number of critical loads. And you have a big cluster of critical loads here. So you've got the Northwest Wastewater Treatment Plant, Animal Control, you have the jail and the Sheriff's Dispatch Office, County Emergency Operations Center, National Guard Armory, and Sutter Lakeside Hospital. And we actually have received a letter of support and interest from Sutter Lakeside that their hospital would be interested in joining this microgrid. And they provided us a nice letter of support to go along with the application. The initial technical review on this looks pretty good, but the project needs more work on feasibility to really make sure that there aren't any red flags, there aren't any things that we haven't seen so far that could potentially derail the project. And the nice part is that this grant, the Better Together grant, can pay for a feasibility study, or at least the start of a fuller feasibility study. The second project is in Middletown, and this is a rather unique project in that it is not it's a new generation project, but what it really is it's called energy recovery. So there's an existing pipeline, as most of you will know, that's the Southeast Geyser Effluent Pipeline, where 6,000 gallons per minute comes from the wastewater treatment plants around Clear Lake and is pumped over to the geysers. Well, it flows down a large existing pipeline, and from the peak of the system in the Hastings Creek watershed, it flows down about 600 feet. Well, if you've got 6,000 gallons per minute and 600 feet of drop, you have enough to power about a 500 to 600 kW turbine every hour out of the day. And what that does is it just recovers some of the energy that went into pumping the water up. That's why it's called an energy recovery installation. But that would allow generation in the Middletown area. One of the things that's really interesting is that even though we need to have steady state water flow coming out of the Middletown wastewater treatment plant area to Bear Creek and to be pumped to the geysers, there's an opportunity to put a much larger tank on the pipeline, which would allow more than 500 kW to be generated at once. It would allow it to be segregated by time and to have a much higher power output. And that could feed a microgrid in the Middletown area, particularly for the areas that are HFTD1 and are close to the substation. Again, the initial technical review on this looks pretty good, but the project needs more work on feasibility. The reason that we're so focused on grants is this. This is actually something that was developed for Hidden Valley Lake, but your projects are very similar, particularly Lakeport. If you look at what a 10 megawatt asset could do, it can generate a little over $3 million a year in terms of its output. But of that $3 million, a big part of it, the single largest element, is what's called capacity sales. The problem is that capacity sales are currently very difficult, if not impossible, to make happen, because there are some log jams at the California Independent System Operator with approving new assets to sell capacity into the market. So until that log jam gets cleared up, we can't count in the pro forma on there being capacity sales. What that ends up meaning is that takes out about 80% of the profit for the investor. So we need to, in lieu of capacity sales, we need to have some grants come in to buy down the cost of the project so the investors can get the can get the return that they're looking for. The good news is there are a lot of grants out there. There are more grants coming. So we have the Build Back Better Challenge. That's the big one coming up. That's due on October 19th. It's actually a two-stage grant. So the first stage, which is the application's due on October 19th, will give another $500,000 for engineering and feasibility studies, which is a pretty fair bit of money. They decide on that in supposedly the first week of December. We'll get notice on whether we get that award or not. And they're expecting 50 to 60 communities across the United States to be awarded these phase 1 challenge grants. Out of those 50 to 60 awardees, they'll be invited to submit, using those dollars that they were awarded for engineering, to submit a phase 2 Build Back Better Challenge grant. That Build Back Better Challenge grant totals up to $100 million to be granted to local communities. So that's the big thing that we're building towards. If we are able to get that, these projects can happen and we can do a lot of good in Lake County. There are also other grants. There's a Community Microgrid Enablement Program, which we've been working with PG&E on it. Some really helpful folks from PG&E helping us get access to data sets that we normally wouldn't have access to. There's a Microgrid Incentive Program that's coming up next year, and we've been participating in the workshops about how the MIP will be structured. It's received $200 million from the PUC, and it can grant up to $15 million at a time, but that program is still under development. And there are also some additional programs and grant opportunities that we're fully expecting to see come out of both state and federal government. And on those, hopefully we'll have enough time like we have for Build Back Better, where we've got 8 or 10 weeks to look at it instead of trying to squeeze it into 2 or 3. But we're really trying to take a crack at all of the grant opportunities for Lake County where these types of solutions fit. And with that, Doug, what about the path forward?
Yeah, so today we are asking for approval for us to submit the application on the Better Together grant application that's before you. What will be coming up next, again, we'll be back in a few weeks to present on the Build Back Better application. Today, again, Better Together Resilient Communities Grant Program coming up, the Build Back Better application. With that, we come back to you. There is different financial obligations in submitting for that grant. And again, we're working with staff right now through all of those to fully understand what those obligations would be. So with that, I think we'll pass that back over to staff and for any questions that are coming our way.
All right, thank you, Doug. If you could stop you or whoever is sharing the screen, I appreciate the presentation. Obviously, a lot of information there. Not all of it is applicable to this specific grant application. I know Michael is excited about this and wants to share information. But I think it's important to understand that that at this point we're not talking about a commitment of the counties. We're talking about a grant application and a lot of what if we get the grant. Train would be under a future agreement. They would be the contractor to do the feasibility study. And then the next steps from there actually goes right in line with the energy contract that we're pursuing, ultimately leading to an investment grade audit, a lot of which, at least on the advanced energy side, this grant would help pay for work that may have otherwise needed to be done and factored into the long-term cost of this project. So at this point, turn it over to the board for any questions and consideration. Ultimately, there's the A and the B. So the presentation is there, and I'll just wrap it up there and turn it over to the board.
All right, thank you everyone for the presentation and also for the agenda item. Are there any questions or comments from board members? I think what's exciting is that there's other opportunities that we're not quite certain of that may be coming to us, such as the infrastructure programs that are being discussed at the federal government. In my opinion, these feasibility studies put us in the best of positions to be able to access those funds versus not having the feasibility study and not having something that's ready to go that we know is going to be viable here in the community. I know that the programs that are being suggested and commented on today, I think those are exactly the types of programs we need to be looking for in the future. We can't wait for PG&E to do something that's going to put us in a better position. And even if they do, it's going to be mainly for their benefit, not for ours. And here, this is absolutely to our benefit when it comes to the Firewise stuff, as well as the electrical grid stuff. So I appreciate you bringing this to us, and I'll keep my fingers crossed that this gets approved and that we also get approved at the grant level. And with that, Supervisor Simon.
Yeah. Director Lars, thank you for bringing this, and also Matthew, thank you very much for the presentation. And appreciate the call and everything. As it said in there, the Lake County Risk Reduction Authority know that there are other agencies that will be going for this, and we have written the support letter. And we did our due diligence, just as Matthew said, where we could support both. Bringing any dollars into the county is very important. But I do. I'm excited about the opportunities too that we're talking about today, and I just want to, put it on record here that, the AR. It's great that we're going for the grant, but I don't want us to miss out on the opportunity if another agency in the county gets it, that we don't move forward with this. So I'd really like to just pose a question to the ARP funds. That is for infrastructure and opportunities. So what I'm saying is, if we apply for this, we don't get it. Want to keep moving forward and look at an opportunity where we do fund it. It's great that we're trying to use grant funds, but we have in our hand right now the opportunity through the ARP funds to fund some of this stuff too. So the ARP committee, I just want to put that out there, at least have the conversations and bring it back, because everything they're talking about is exactly where we need to go in Lake County for our future. So I just want to put that on record. I am in support of this today. And I will say that the Lake County Risk Reduction Authority, we meet every third Monday of the month, and we're really trying to collaborate. So if there's anything with grants or anything, Lars or anyone on there, the meeting is open. We're trying to get a best fits grant too, so we're always thinking, so we're not competing against each other. And by next year, hopefully everything's in line and we'll just keep moving that forward. It is something new we have just started with the NCO coming on board to make sure that we bring all the funds into Lake County that we can. But I really want to stress the opportunity for infrastructure, and that's exactly what we're talking about here with the ARP funds, that we don't miss that opportunity to have shovel-ready projects as these other funds are coming down. So that's it, but I am in support.
I appreciate you saying that. I don't know that the North Lakeport one fits within, but definitely the one in Middletown, because I know it talked about sewer and water. Not sure if it extends into all other infrastructure, but absolutely, I think there's alternative ways to making sure we keep moving forward rather than thinking it's a good project and watching it be shelved and waiting for future opportunities. So absolutely agree with you on that.
And I just want to say, you don't know if it's not ready if you don't ask the question. So continue to push the bounds on those. When they're talking about infrastructure and building back better, the ARP funds, I think are available for that. This is infrastructure. When we talk about infrastructure, it could mean all types of different infrastructure. So I say, if we're not successful in the grant, that we don't miss this opportunity.
Got it. Loud and clear. Where exactly is the Middletown project? Where are you?
So the existing Southeast Geyser effluent pipeline goes from Lower Lake. It passes about 2 miles to the west, a little over 2 miles to the west of Hidden Valley Lake, and then pretty much due south into Middletown. It has an existing pipeline. The pumps are in Lower Lake. They push it up to the top of to the crest of the hills, again, just west of Hidden Valley Lake. And there's, at the crest right now, there's a tank, about a 250,000 gallon tank. So the pumps from Lower Lake pump the water up to that tank, and then it gravity feeds down into Middletown to the wastewater treatment plant, and then pumps take it from there over to Bear Creek Canyon, and from there over to the geysers. What we'd be looking to do is to utilize that existing water flow that's already happening, and that existing that effluent pipeline that's already there, and to try and harvest, recover some of the energy that's being put into moving that water up to the crest of the hills as it falls down. That's sort of the minimum. The maximum would be increasing the amount of water storage at the crest at the Hastings Creek headwaters watershed, and allowing more water to flow down at once so it could power on a temporary basis a larger turbine, and that would give us more power output to feed into the area there in Middletown.
Thank you for that. One of the critical needs for a lot of these areas is access to water for the helicopter. The new Firehawk, if it could connect to a water tank, it would be really helpful so they don't have to go further to the lakes.
Well, funny you say that, but in these grants, what we're looking to do is to put in something that looks sort of like a swimming pool, and it's called a dip tank, and it can be flooded. It's normally dry, but it can be flooded with the water, and that would allow the helicopters, whether it's the Firehawk with their hose pulling it up, or whether it's the actual buckets to go into it. We also look at putting hydrants on the pipeline. That would be more for the North Lakeport installation, where we'd have hydrants on the pipeline itself, so that it doesn't just convey the water, but it can be the base of firefighting over the area that it traverses. And the last thing is that in addition to being able to tie it into the town's fire main system, we also look to have a multi-lane, what we call a toll booth, which would allow rapid refilling of multiple water tankers at once, so that we can really use that water and get it out quickly to help be an integrated part of the firefighting. Because again, these are firefighting resources first that just happen to have an energy component that helps pay for them and other things.
Yeah. And I know that South Lake Fire Protection District is looking at some grants to build water storage tanks in these areas, and so that could be another avenue of collaboration.
Thank you very much. Any further comments from the board before we open it up for the public? All right, let's go ahead and open it up for the public. Any comments from anyone in the Zoom room or the board chambers? I see one hand up. We got Jonathan Braniff. Please provide your full name, and you have 3 minutes.
Hello there, my name is Jonathan Braniff, and congratulations to the Train team for all the work that you've done. And thank you to the Board of Supervisors for allowing us to present. Much like what Train has been doing and applying with PG&E's Better Together Resilience campaign, we want to invite the Board of Supervisors to consider approving a resolution for a forthcoming meeting that would allow the county, the Pomo Native American community, the University of San Francisco, and our company Block Junction to sign off on an MOU which would tie into a non-binding and non-matching funding grant, much like what we're talking about here. And I commend the team here for the work that you're doing, and this is really important, particularly with the Better Together campaign and all the various initiatives that are going on right now to reinvest into communities. So this is very, very important work, so I commend you all in that. We would be actively going after a grant much like the group here today is talking about, which would be for $1 million through the Department of Commerce for a transformation project across the county involving all the different constituencies that live within the community. Energy is a part of that, like what we're talking about here right now. Looking at infrastructure, looking at the water, looking at fire resiliency and various other issues. It's an opportunity for this community to lead and not follow, much like what we're talking about here with the Train group, to understand the value within the community and within the people, and to transform the relationship with the different constituencies and the different bodies across the county, such as what we're talking about here with these community microgrids. It'd be an opportunity to look at who are we in this place? How do we support our people? How do we make sure that we don't have 3-hour commutes to find a job? That salaries are too low, so we're unable to hire fire or police officers or others that are needed to improve life within the community. How to deal with a polluted lake that's struggling in its existence right now, or how to deal with forestry after 97% of Mendocino was burnt to the ground. We can forward to the group and we can have a conversation with Carol on offline separately in regards to this, with the idea of developing essentially a resolution much like what the train group put here today, and then an MOU that would be signed off by the 4 different parties, which would be the first of its kind ever done in the United States. This would allow us to lead and not follow. It would allow us to focus on what Vision 2028 could and should be, and to look at the importance of leapfrogging other communities as we try to transform life in Lake County, rather than looking at others with envy, realizing that this community can lead. So what we're asking is for the community to consider signing off on an MOU and a resolution on a grant that would be over $1 million tied in.
I'm going to interrupt at this moment in time, and I appreciate your comment and your participation in this, but you seem to be making a sales pitch for us to create an MOU. I don't think that conversation is out of context entirely, but I think that conversation needs to begin, as you stated, reaching out maybe to our CAO. And then seeing where it goes from there. But I don't know that the comment is in relation specifically to what we are looking at today, which is the approval of the letter and agreement. And again, I do appreciate your participation and look forward to hearing what your further conversations are like.
Thank you, and I appreciate the comments of the group, and I wish the train folks all the best in this. It sounds like a great project and opportunities. Thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank you. And with that, I see no further hands up, either in the boardroom or in the Zoom room. So bringing it back to the board, unless there's further deliberation, I believe we're looking for action.
So
offering the resolution as amended.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to offer the resolution as amended.
Resolution's been offered by Supervisor Simon. Johanna, roll call, please.
Okay, Supervisor Simon,
Yes.
Supervisor Crandall,
Aye.
Supervisor Scott,
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska,
Yes.
and Supervisor Sabatier.
Aye.
And
Thank you.
Matthew, I want to make sure the amended resolution has been sent to Johanna as a PDF.
Yes, it has been sent, and so if Ms. Grant and Chairman Sabatier can watch their email, it will be forwarded soon, because obviously the grant deadline is today.
Thank you, Matthew.
I will look for it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone again for being part of this item.
Thank you.
So I believe that does it for our public session today. And so we're going to move on to the remainder of our closed session items. 8.1, Public Employee Evaluation, title Public Works Director. 8.2, Public Employee Evaluation, title Behavioral Health Director. And then 8.4, Conference with Temporary Representatives designated to meet with county department heads regarding salary and benefits of unrepresented management employees. And with that, thank you again for joining us. We will reconvene to closed session.
And closed session